So right now, literally as you listen to this, an American tourist is probably standing on some sun-drenched cobblestone street in Greece.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh.
Probably framing up the perfect Instagram shot.
Exactly. You know the one. The pristine whitewashed villa, the
Hmm.
brilliant blue of the Aegean Sea right behind it. I mean, it is the ultimate vacation paradise.
It really is. It's gorgeous.
But, and this is the crazy part, just like 3 feet outside the frame of that photo, hiding under some rusted dumpster, there's a blind kitten starving to death.
Yeah.
Or, in another neighborhood entirely, a senior cat, one who spent a decade sleeping at the foot of someone's bed, is just huddled in a doorway, abandoned,
Yeah.
just because her owner moved away and couldn't be bothered to take her.
It's such a devastating juxtaposition.
Right. Greece has this massive secret that the postcards definitely do not show. And it's a secret that is 3 million animals large.
3 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have this idyllic, highly sought after tourist destination, and it's layered directly on top of this silent crisis of suffering.
And once you see it, you just can't unsee it.
You really can't.
Exactly. But, and this is really why we're here today for this deep dive, while that kitten and that senior cat are being ignored by, the vast majority of people walking by, there's a group of people who are actively refusing to look away.
Thank goodness for them.
Truly. So today, we're dedicating our time to unpacking the incredible story of Let's Be Smart.
Yes.
They're this privately funded rescue organization, and they've spent the last 19 years quietly executing one of the most extraordinary, relentlessly effective rescue missions in all of Europe.
And we have a truly fascinating stack of source materials on the table to guide us through this today.
We really do.
We're looking at a huge collection of Let's Be Smart's organizational scripts, their deeply detailed operational notes, and these highly granular financial breakdowns.
It's rare to get this level of transparency.
It is. And these documents, they honestly offer a masterclass in how to tackle a seemingly insurmountable crisis.
So, if you're listening, whether you're a devoted animal lover wanting to understand the front lines of rescue, or maybe you're just a pure logistics nerd.
Which there's plenty of logistics here.
Oh, so much. If you love seeing how impossible supply chain and resource problems get solved, or even if you're a business owner looking for a blueprint on how to make a concrete impact, this session is for you.
Absolutely.
We are going to unpack exactly how a small group of people looked at an impossibly large number and simply got to work.
And I think we really have to start by addressing that number directly. Because when you look at the raw data in our sources, the scale of what Let's Be Smart is confronting, well, it would break most people's resolve on day one.
Let's get right into it then, because we absolutely cannot understand the impact of Let's Be Smart until we fully grasp the terrifying scale of the mountain they're climbing.
Right.
The number in our sources that it stopped me completely cold, 3 million.
3 million stray animals.
3 million stray animals on the streets of Greece right now.
It is a staggering figure. It gives Greece one of the absolute highest stray animal populations in all of Europe.
Wow.
And what the data clearly shows is that this isn't, a static number. It's a biological crisis that is actively growing every single year.
I spent a lot of time trying to visualize 3 million because it's not just a big number. It's the population of a major global city.
All right, like Chicago.
Exactly. It's roughly the population of Chicago.
Yeah.
Or Madrid. So I was thinking, just imagine an entire metropolis, every single man, woman, and child, and replace them with starving, vulnerable animals fending for themselves in the elements.
It's a horrifying mental image.
It really is. How does anyone look at a literal city of 3 million suffering animals and not just instantly give up? It feels like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon.
It does.
But before we get to the how they fix it part, I
Yeah.
really need to understand the how did we get here part. Because 3 million strays doesn't just happen overnight.
No, it certainly doesn't. And what's fascinating here from a purely systemic perspective is the domino effect of structural collapse that creates a number like 3 million.
Okay, unpack that. How does a modern European nation reach this point?
Well, our sources point to a massive failure at the municipal level. By law, and honestly by social expectation, local city councils are usually the first line of defense for animal welfare.
Right, animal control, local shelters.
Yeah, exactly. They're supposed to manage the local populations. But in Greece, they're completely overwhelmed and drastically underfunded.
Okay, but let's break down that underfunding for a second. It's not just that local governments are lazy or don't care, right? It's a real economic reality.
Precisely. You have to look at the macroeconomic environment over there. Greece has weathered severe economic crises over the last 2 decades.
Oh, right, the debt crisis.
Yes. The local tax base simply isn't robust enough to support the massive municipal animal control infrastructure required to manage millions of animals.
That makes sense.
And simultaneously, veterinary costs, I mean the cost of medicine, anesthesia, surgical supplies, those have been rising exponentially across the globe.
Everything is getting more expensive.
So these local councils, they have shrinking budgets on one hand and decreasing purchasing power on the other.
So if a town council used to be able to afford, say, 100 spay and neuter surgeries a month, now maybe they can only afford 20.
Exactly. And when those municipal spay and neuter programs stall out, the biological math takes over. We'll get into the specific exponential math of that later, but essentially the population just explodes.
It just spirals out of control.
Add to this a massive societal lack of education regarding responsible pet ownership. There is a huge cultural gap in understanding things like the necessity of keeping pets indoors or the absolute requirement of sterilization.
Or even just viewing an animal as a long-term commitment.
Right. The fact that an animal is a 15 to 20-year commitment, not just a temporary accessory you discard when you move.
And the most crucial element in our notes, I mean, the absolute crux of the crisis is the lack of a safety net.
Yeah.
There is zero government backing coming to save the day for these animals. The burden of this entire 3 million animal crisis falls 100% on privately funded rescues, like Let's Be Smart.
Zero government funding. This means every single bandage, every antibiotic pill, every bowl of food is paid for by private citizens.
That is just wild to me.
It is. But the systemic failure goes beyond just economics, too. If we extrapolate from these facts, we really have to deeply consider what happens to the psychology of a community when stray animals become a normalized, everyday part of the landscape.
Right. I was actually thinking about this while reading the notes. If you walk out your door every single morning and see starving animals, and you know there is no government agency to call, you can't just cry every single day.
No, you can't function like that.
Right. Human psychology just doesn't allow for that level of sustained, intense distress.
Exactly. Human psychology resorts to self-protection. It's a psychological phenomenon closely related to sensory adaptation.
Like getting used to a smell in a room.
Yes, or think about what happens if you move into an apartment right next to a really busy train track.
Oh, okay.
For the first 2 weeks, the noise is deafening, right? It wakes you up in a panic. But after 6 months,
You don't even hear it.
you don't even hear the train anymore. Your brain literally filters it out to protect your sanity.
So the starving cats become the train.
Precisely. It leads to this collective societal apathy. People learn to look away because the alternative, feeling the full crushing weight of that suffering every single day is simply too painful to endure.
Wow.
This learned helplessness in the community makes the work of rescues infinitely harder. Not only is Let's Be Smart fighting biological reproduction and a severe lack of funds, they are fighting a deeply ingrained cultural habit of turning a blind eye.
Which perfectly brings us to the operational philosophy of Let's Be Smart, because they have been fighting that specific apathy for 19 years. 19 years.
19 years. Just think about what you were doing 19 years ago. To sustain that level of intense, emotional, physically demanding work for nearly 2 decades without burning out is just mind-boggling.
It requires an incredibly resilient foundation. You really can't survive 19 years in the rescue trenches, dealing with that level of compassion fatigue and financial stress, without a rock-solid, uncompromising philosophy of care.
And their philosophy, as outlined in the sources, is really fascinating. They explicitly state they refuse to offer quick bandages. They want to change the entire story for these animals.
Yeah.
But here is where we really need to get into the weeds, because I had some serious pushback based on my reading of the operational notes.
Oh, really? Let's hear it.
Well, the sources emphasize that Let's Be Smart actively does not cherry-pick the easy cases.
In fact, they purposefully prioritize the absolute hardest ones. We're talking the sick street kittens with severe upper respiratory infections, the forgotten seniors with renal issues, the disabled cats that literally every other shelter or individual just writes off as a lost cause.
Yes, every single one gets medical treatment, love, and a real chance.
Right. But I want to play devil's advocate here and really lean into the logistics and the math.
Okay, go for it.
If I am the CEO of a rescue operation and I'm looking at a crisis of 3 million animals, Wouldn't it make significantly more sense from a pure numbers game to only take the easy cases?
I see where you're going.
Think about it. If you take in a healthy, cute 6-month-old kitten, you can vet it cheaply, maybe spend €50, adopt it out in a week, and immediately free up that cage for the next one.
Right. Rapid turnover.
Yes. You could process, say, 50 healthy animals in the exact same amount of time and money it takes to rehabilitate one severely disabled, chronically ill senior cat. If the ultimate goal is reducing that 3 million number, doesn't basic business logic dictate that you turn over your inventory as fast as possible?
Well, if you approach this from a cold, utilitarian, factory line perspective, your math is perfectly correct.
Right.
It is economically and emotionally much easier and seemingly more efficient to rescue the cute, healthy animals that will find homes instantly.
So why don't they do that?
Because Let's Be Smart isn't running a factory line. They are executing a moral mission. By deliberately choosing to take the seniors, the blind, the tripods, the medically complex cats, Let's Be Smart is making a definitive philosophical statement that challenges the very root of the crisis.
Okay, but I'm going to push back on you again. I hear the moral argument, and it sounds beautiful in a brochure.
Right.
But we are looking at real financials here.
Uh-huh.
Later in our sources, we see they face €35,000 a month in operating costs and massive vet bills. Isn't there a very real risk that this moral stance spending thousands of euros on a single unadoptable cat bankrupts the organization entirely? And if they go bankrupt, they are helping exactly 0 cats. How do they justify the financial viability of this philosophy?
That is the critical question. And the answer lies in understanding that treating the hardest cases isn't just a moral luxury, it's actually a long-term strategic necessity for changing the culture.
How so?
If you only save the pretty easy, cheap animals, you're implicitly reinforcing the exact same societal idea that created the crisis in the first place, that animals are disposable commodities.
Oh.
You're telling the public, when an animal is young and cute, it has value. When it is broken, sick, or old, you throw it away.
So the factory model of rescue actually validates the apathy of the public.
Exactly. Let's Be Smart is actively fighting that commodification. When an organization chooses to spend significant resources on a cat that might take months to heal or might even need a permanent sanctuary spot because it's unadoptable, it fundamentally alters the moral fabric of the community observing it.
Because people are watching them do this.
Yes. It forces the neighbor, the local politician, the volunteer to look at a broken animal and realize it isn't trash. It is a living being worthy of significant medical investment. It sends a powerful message to the public. You matter and you're staying.
You matter and you're staying. Okay, that completely dismantles my business logic argument.
That's a whole paradigm shift.
It really is. It's not just about reducing the physical number from 3 million to 2 million. It's about changing how a society values a life. If you treat the most broken, discarded creatures as inherently valuable, you are teaching the community a totally different level of empathy.
Exactly.
And over the span of 19 years, that shift in empathy is what actually stops people from abandoning their pets in the first place. It is a long-term investment in cultural change.
Precisely. It is the only known antidote to the psychological sensory adaptation we discussed earlier. You wake the community up by showing them what radical compassion looks like in practice.
Wow. And, a beautiful philosophy is great. But what I love about these sources is that Let's Be Smart has the hard, concrete data to back up 19 years of this work.
They really do.
They aren't just talking about empathy, they're executing it at a massive scale. So let's decode the anatomy of their impact. Let's look at the actual numbers they have generated, starting with the sterilizations.
Right. According to the operational notes, they have performed over 4,750 sterilizations.
4,750. That is a massive number of individual surgeries for a privately funded group.
It is? But we need to dig into the biology to understand why 4,750 is arguably the most vital number in this entire dossier.
Okay, let's dig in.
We cannot just look at this as 4,750 individual cats helped. Biologically speaking, this is an astronomical number of lives impacted.
Let's talk about the biological compounding, because you mentioned the exponential math earlier. Walk me through exactly how one unspayed cat impacts the 3 million crisis.
Think of feline reproduction like compound interest in a savings account. But instead of accruing cash, you are accruing starving animals. Let's start with just one unspayed female cat on the streets of Athens.
Just one?
Just one. Cats are induced ovulators and highly efficient breeders. That one female can easily have 2 litters a year with an average of 4 kittens per litter.
Okay, so by the end of year 1, that one cat has produced 8 kittens.
Right.
8 cats from 1. I mean, that doesn't sound world-ending yet.
But here is where the compound interest kicks in. Female kittens can reach sexual maturity and become pregnant at just 4 to 6 months of age.
Wait, really? At 4 months?
Yes. So within that same first year, the earliest females born to our original cat are already having their own litters.
Oh, wow.
By the end of year 2, that original family tree could number over 40 cats.
From 1 cat in 2 years.
Exactly. And by year 3, if half of those cats are female and breeding, you're looking at nearly 400 cats. By year 5, you are easily into the tens of thousands.
From 1 cat in 5 years.
Yep.
Tens of thousands. That is terrifying math.
It is biological wildfire. So when Let's Be Smart performs 4,750 sterilizations, they haven't just treated 4,750 specific cats.
No, they've stopped the wildfire.
Exactly. They have successfully prevented the birth and the subsequent suffering, starvation, and disease of literally millions of future unhoused kittens over a 5-year horizon. Sterilization is the ultimate preventative medicine. It is the only way to effectively attack the root of the 3 million crisis rather than just treating the symptoms.
That makes the value of a single spay surgery absolutely astronomical. But of course, they aren't just spaying and releasing every cat, they also handle massive adoption operations.
They do.
The sources show over 1,000 cats placed into forever homes. And what really stands out to me here is that these aren't just local adoptions. These are national and international adoptions.
Which brings us to the logistics that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
We really need to pause and appreciate the staggering level of logistical sophistication required to pull off international animal rescue. It's not just, putting a cat in the cardboard box and sending it on an airplane.
Yeah, right. If you are a logistics nerd listening to this, this is where Let's Be Smart's operation becomes mind-blowing. Let's actually walk through what it takes to get one single disabled cat from a street in Greece to a living room in, say, Chicago. Let's map that supply chain.
Okay, let's trace the journey of one complex case. First, you have the capture and the immediate veterinary intervention in Greece. That involves orthopedic surgeries, antibiotics, and months of specialized rehabilitation at the sanctuary.
Which is already a massive undertaking.
Right. And during this time, the bureaucracy begins. To move an animal across international borders, you need an EU pet passport.
Which involves microchipping and registering the animal locally, right?
Exactly. Then comes the medical clearances. You need comprehensive vaccinations and, crucially, a rabies titer test.
What exactly is a titer test?
Now, a titer test isn't just a vaccine. It's a laboratory blood test to check the animal's antibody levels to actually prove the rabies vaccine was effective.
Oh, I see.
And these blood samples often have to be sent to approved, specialized labs, sometimes out of the country entirely. And then there is a mandatory waiting period, often 30 to 90 days before the animal is legally cleared to travel.
And while you're waiting those 3 months, Let's Be Smart is housing, feeding, and caring for this cat.
Yes. Then, once legally cleared, you have to navigate the actual transportation. You can't just buy a ticket for a cat on Delta.
Obviously not.
You need an approved flight volunteer, a human passenger willing to attach the animal to their ticket. Let's Be Smart has to coordinate the schedules of the adoptive family in Chicago, the availability of a flight volunteer leaving Athens, and the specific airline regulations, which, by the way, very wild.
Oh, I'm sure.
Does the airline allow pets in the cabin? Are there temperature embargoes for pets in the cargo hold? What are the specific dimensions for the IATA-approved travel crate?
And then the customs import laws when they land in the U.S.
Exactly.
Making sure the CDC guidelines for importing animals are strictly followed so the cat isn't just seized at the border.
Precisely. The sheer amount of paperwork, coordination, and crisis management required for one cat is a full-time job. To successfully execute this for over 1,000 cats means Let's Be Smart isn't just a local shelter with a few cages. They are functioning as a massive, highly regulated, international logistical hub.
It is an absolute triumph of project management, but we also know you can't export 3 million cats.
No, you can't.
Even with 1,000 successful adoptions, the vast majority of the animals have to stay in Greece. And this leads us to the number in the operational notes that I am most obsessed with, 75.
Yes.
Let's Be Smart has established 75 smart yards. I want to spend some real time on this because this feels like the architectural key to the whole puzzle.
It is arguably their most brilliant tactical innovation. If we connect this back to the systemic failure and that collective apathy we discussed in the first section, the smart yard is the geographical and psychological cure.
So for you listening, let's define what this actually is. A smart yard is a designated community-built space that protects strays. But its true genius is that it actively turns local neighbors into proud, devoted caregivers. Let's really look at the mechanics of this. How does a smart yard actually function in a neighborhood?
Traditionally, stray cats are viewed as a neighborhood nuisance, right? They rip open garbage bags looking for food. The unneutered males fight and spray. They're seen as pests carrying disease.
Yeah, which reinforces the apathy and the annoyance of the locals.
Exactly. But by creating a designated managed smart yard, which typically involves building proper feeding stations, setting up weatherproof shelters, and establishing a managed colony where every single cat is trapped, sterilized, and vaccinated by, let's be smart, you completely change the environment.
You literally change the architecture of the neighborhood's relationship with the animals.
Precisely. You decentralize the rescue work. Let's be smart. Cannot build a single sanctuary large enough to house 3 million cats. It's physically and economically impossible. But by building a smart yard, they give the local residents a structured, hygienic way to care for the animals right in their own backyard. The neighbor who used to yell at the cats to get off their porch now has a clean, organized, designated area to bring them food and fresh water.
It gives people permission to care.
Yes.
This goes back to the sensory adaptation thing. If you just see a sick, starving cat in the alley, you feel overwhelmed, you don't know how to catch it, you can't afford the vet, so you just look away.
Right. You shut down.
But if there is a beautiful, structured little smart yard, and you know the cats inside are already spayed, vaccinated, and monitored by the experts at Let's Be Smart, your anxiety drops. You suddenly want to be the person who fills the water bowl on Tuesday mornings. It transforms the cats from those annoying, dirty strays to our community cats.
Exactly. It creates a sense of community ownership without the terrifying burden of full personal adoption or massive veterinary bills. And this is exactly how you dismantle societal apathy, neighborhood by neighborhood. You engage the public as active, proud participants in the solution, rather than passive observers of a tragedy.
And maintaining 75 of these decentralized nodes requires a massive amount of human capital. Which brings us to the final number in this anatomy of impact, their volunteer base.
Let's Be Smart has built a global family of over 750 volunteers.
Managing 750 people is a monumental task.
I can't even imagine.
You have to consider the logistics of managing human resources across different time zones, languages, and skill sets. You have physical volunteers flying into Greece to do the hard labor of cleaning enclosures and trapping cats, but you also have a massive digital infrastructure.
Like the people managing the social media, right?
Exactly. And coordinating those international flights we discussed, updating the websites, writing the grant proposals, managing donor relations. They are essentially running a multinational corporation's human resources department, entirely dedicated to a nonprofit mission. To attract and retain 750 people to do incredibly hard, often heartbreaking work for free shows that Let's Be Smart haven't just built a rescue. They have created a culture and a movement that people are absolutely desperate to be a part of.
But we need to bring this down to earth for a moment.
Okay, hit me.
Because passion, culture, and brilliant logistical frameworks are amazing, but they do not pay for antibiotics.
Right, yeah.
We really need to talk about the financial reality of compassion. You can have the most dedicated 750 volunteers in the world and the most beautifully designed smart yards, but logistics, medicine, specialized surgeries, and premium cat food require hard cash.
And this is where the financial breakdowns in our sources provide a very sobering, very stark reality check. The total operating cost for Let's Be Smart to keep the sanctuary running, the international adoptions flowing, and the medical kits stocked is 35,000 euros per month.
35,000 euros every single month. And we have to remember what we established at the very beginning of this deep dive. There is zero government funding.
Zero.
There are no municipal grants. There is no state-sponsored safety net. So when the calendar flips to the first of the month, the organization starts at absolute zero.
Let that sink in. Just imagine running a business where your fixed overhead is 35,000 euros and your guaranteed income on the first of the month is zero.
It's terrifying.
That is an immense, crushing psychological burden for the operators. To know that the literal lives of hundreds of animals depend on you raising 35,000 euros from scratch, entirely from the goodwill of private citizens, every 30 days.
And let's look at exactly where that money is going, because the breakdown is revealing. The sources specify that veterinary and medical care alone, the late-night emergencies, the complex orthopedic surgeries, the daily medications for chronic illnesses, that comes to an average of 8,000 euros per month.
Oh. And this circles right back to the philosophical pushback we had earlier.
Yes, it does.
We discussed how Let's Be Smart deliberately refuses to cherry-pick the easy cases. They prioritize the forgotten seniors, the blind cats, the ones hit by cars.
Precisely. By taking the hardest, most broken cases, they are inherently and knowingly taking on the highest possible medical bills.
Yeah.
If you rescue a healthy kitten, the vet bill is minimal. If you rescue a cat that has been struck by a vehicle and requires pins in its legs, specialized physical therapy, and weeks of hospitalization, that is thousands of euros for one single animal.
Wow.
Their unwavering commitment to the intrinsic value of every life is exactly what drives that staggering €8,000 monthly vet bill.
It makes their philosophical stance not just brave, but incredibly tangibly costly. They're putting their money exactly where their morals are month after month.
They are, and unfortunately the sources indicate that the strain is immense. They are currently stretched incredibly thin and are actually running an emergency vet bill fundraiser just to keep their heads above water.
Because the emergencies don't just stop.
Exactly. The reality of rescue is that the animals don't stop getting hit by cars, and the kittens don't stop starving just because the rescue's bank account is running low. The influx of critical cases is relentless.
That is a really heavy reality to sit with. But amidst those intense medical costs, there is another line item in their budget that I found incredibly forward-thinking and hopeful.
The educational series.
Yes. The sources note that Let's Be Smart spends about €2,500 per series to produce high-quality educational videos for schools, actively teaching the next generation about kindness to animals and responsible pet ownership.
And if we connect this back to everything we've discussed today, the 3 million strays, the biological compounding, the societal apathy, this €2,500 is arguably their most strategic high-yield investment.
Because you cannot simply adopt your way out of a 3 million animal crisis.
Exactly. You can't adopt your way out of it, and frankly, you can't even solely sterilize your way out of it if the underlying culture doesn't fundamentally change. If people keep viewing pets as disposable and keep throwing unspayed cats out into the streets, the cycle just restarts endlessly.
Educating children is the ultimate long-game strategy. By going directly into schools with these video series, Let's Be Smart is working to ensure that 20 years from now, the next generation of adults won't abandon their pets when they move away.
Right. They're cultivating deep-rooted empathy at the structural level.
They're building a society that won't tolerate 3 million strays, which will naturally shrink that number organically over time.
It's treating the disease, not just the symptom.
Okay, but I have to stop us here and ask the question that I know someone listening is thinking right now.
Let's hear it.
Because hearing these numbers, €35,000 a month in operating costs, €8,000 in emergency vet bills, $2,500 for a video series, what does this actually mean for the listener? I'll be completely honest. If I am listening to this on my commute and I have €20 to spare this month, hearing that Let's Be Smart needs 35,000 can make my €20 feel entirely useless. It feels like throwing a pebble into a canyon. Why should I bother? Does an individual small donation actually move the needle in the face of these massive systemic numbers?
It is a very common, very understandable psychological barrier to charitable giving. People look at the macro scale of a problem, do the math on their micro contribution, and think, my €20 is statistically insignificant, therefore I will do nothing.
Right, because the math is intimidating.
But Let's Be Smart's entire 19-year history is a living, breathing reputation of that exact idea.
How so? Because the math still says 20 is a tiny fraction of 35,000.
Because you have to look at the aggregate power of grassroots funding. Let's Be Smart did not achieve 4,750 sterilizations because a billionaire wrote them a single check for millions of euros. They did not pull off 1,000 international adoptions because the government handed them a massive grant. They built this empire of compassion through thousands upon thousands of 5, 20, and 50 euro donations from regular people. The sources make this explicitly clear. Every single before and after success story, every terrified broken stray that was transformed into a healthy couch-loving family member happened exclusively because an individual somewhere in the world decided their €20 mattered.
That is such a crucial reframing. Giving to Let's Be Smart isn't a desperate plea for charity to throw into a black hole. It's an invitation to join a highly efficient, proven engine of change. 19 years of concrete, audited evidence proves that the pebble in a canyon mentality is false. The canyon is being filled, and it is being filled by regular people who simply refuse to succumb to apathy.
And our sources provide incredibly specific, accessible avenues for individuals to become part of this engine, depending on how they want to engage.
Let's run through them.
For direct, immediate impact to help chip away at that 35,000 monthly overhead, There are straightforward donations via PayPal. Listeners can send funds directly to donations at letsbesmart.org.
And for people who prefer to know exactly what their money is buying, the logistics nerds who want to supply the actual goods, Let's Be Smart has an Amazon wish list linked directly on their website under in-kind donations. You can literally buy the specialized kitten formula, the bandages, or the specific medical supplies, and Amazon ships it straight to the sanctuary in Greece.
Which is brilliant. Furthermore, for that incredibly pressing €8,000 monthly medical burden, they maintain an active Just Giving page specifically dedicated to their emergency vet fund.
But if we think about the crushing stress of starting at zero every single month, what is the best way to help?
Unquestionably, the most stabilizing force for an organization with €35,000 in fixed monthly costs is predictable, recurring revenue. The forces highly emphasize their Patreon community, which you can find at patreon.com/SMART-Be-Smart-Rescue.
That makes total sense.
By becoming a monthly supporter, even for a very small amount, you give the organization the ability to reliably forecast their budget. It allows them to look at a disabled cat and say, yes, we can afford this surgery, because they know your support is coming next month.
But we also know we have business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs listening to this deep dive. And this is where a massive structural impact can be made in a single stroke. Let's Be Smart has specifically structured corporate partnerships starting at €30,000 a year.
And this is a fascinating offering from a nonprofit operational perspective. For a mid to large corporation, €30,000 is often a standard line item in a marketing or corporate social responsibility CSR budget.
Right, it's already accounted for.
Exactly. But Let's Be Smart has framed this brilliantly for the corporate world. They are offering a legally backed, fully transparent partnership with rigorously documented impact metrics. Furthermore, because of their structure, they offer U.S. 501c3 tax deductibility.
Which is absolutely massive for corporate accounting.
It is transformative. It shifts the narrative from a simple charitable donation to a highly strategic corporate investment. By partnering with Let's Be Smart, a company can literally place their brand on a life-saving smart yard program or sponsor an entire wing of the sanctuary. We know that in today's market, consumers are deeply, passionately invested in the ethical footprint of the brands they support.
Oh, for sure. People want to buy from companies that care.
Associating a corporate brand directly with the literal life-saving metrics of a 19-year boots-on-the-ground mission is an incredibly powerful narrative for any company.
And any business owner or CSR director interested in exploring that can start the conversation directly by emailing fundraising at letsbesmart.org. It really highlights the core takeaway of this entire deep dive. You do not have to fly to Athens.
No, you don't.
You don't have to put on heavy gloves and physically trap a feral cat. You don't have to scoop a single litter box to be a critical life-saving part of this mission. You just have to make the decision that a stray animal, thousands of miles away, deserves a second chance at life. Through your support, you become the silent, powerful partner in their survival.
It is entirely about extending our sphere of influence beyond the immediate physical surroundings of our own lives.
Let's take a step back and look at the immense journey we've just taken in this conversation. We started by confronting the crushing, almost paralyzing weight of 3 million stray animals in Greece. We looked at the systemic failure of municipalities, the biological math of unchecked reproduction, and the psychological defense mechanism of cultural apathy.
Right.
But then we saw how the founders of Let's Be Smart looked at that impossible, heartbreaking mountain, and for 19 unrelenting years, consciously chose action over despair.
We examined their deep philosophical refusal to compromise on the inherent value of life, deliberately choosing to spend their limited resources on the hardest, most broken cases to fundamentally shift the moral compass of an entire community.
We looked at the brilliant, decentralized architectural tactics of their 75 smart yards, the staggering biological impact of 4,750 sterilizations, and the mind-boggling international logistics pulled off by a global network of 750 volunteers.
Yeah.
And finally, we faced the stark, undeniable financial reality of what it actually takes to fund this kind of radical compassion, €35,000 a month, and how every single person, whether throwing in €5 on PayPal, buying formula on Amazon, or a business signing a €30,000 partnership, is the actual engine keeping this miracle running.
Reviewing all of this brings up a profound question about the very concept of legacy.
How do you mean?
Well, in our society, we often think of a legacy as the tangible monuments we build, the massive corporations we found, or the fortunes we leave behind in our wills. But looking at the exhaustive, quiet work of Let's Be Smart Maybe tree legacy is found in the things we prevent from happening.
Wow.
The suffering that never occurs because we decided to intervene. The millions of kittens never born to starve on the freezing streets because of a single sterilization surgery. If a small, privately funded organization can alter the trajectory of millions of lives and begin to change the deep-rooted culture of an entire country with zero institutional help, what could you change in your own sphere of influence today?
That is something to truly mull over as you go about the rest of your day. I want to highly encourage everyone listening right now to pull out your phone and go to letsbesmart.org. Look at the before and after photos of these animals. Look at the eyes of the cats whose lives have been utterly transformed. Give whatever you can, whether it's a one-time gift to their emergency vet fund or taking the step to become a monthly Patreon supporter. And please share this deep dive with someone who cares about animals, someone who loves logistics, or someone who just needs to hear that a small group of people can still make a massive difference in the world. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Remember that blind kitten, that abandoned senior, and that disabled cat we talked about at the very beginning? Because of people exactly like you, they are going to be okay.